Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is video 44 coming at you with another video. So, I want to talk about the Portland Trailblazers. I've been trying to kind of go through each and every team and go down the list of their roster and just kind of tell everybody what I see there. The thing about the Portland Trailblazers, though, is what's most important about the Blazers is not their roster. It's more so their circumstances, which I learned about in reading a very, very, very good article just now. And so I will talk about the roster and what I see. Then I'll talk about what I know is possibly coming. And then I'll tell you what I've learned. So, if you're going to talk about the roster, you have to talk about Dame. Um, Simply the most lethal, devastating killer this side of the conference. I think I think about a guy like Steph Curry. I think about a guy like Kevin Durant. And I think about a guy like Dame. Okay, that's the reality of it. Those are the killers that come to mind first. And Dame may be the most lethal, quite honestly. Homie has already ended 2 series at the buzzer with threes that were just legendary shots that you know he could hit to win a championship if given an opportunity. And quite frankly, he doesn't have one because he's on a team that hasn't made good decisions during his tenure there, and maybe even before he got there. Maybe did some things that put themselves in a position to not really be able to make the team better around him, and that's the situation. So it's not a whole lot to say about Dame. We all know who Dame is. It's Dame time. One of the best players in the world. Next up, C.J. McCollum. C.J. McCollum is a player who has earned All-Star status at this stage in his career. Pure scorer, just like Dame. A guy who came out of college and with comparable shooting numbers to Dame Lillard, which I always think about because it's such an interesting dynamic to have something like that. They essentially drafted another Dame, and he has lived up. Despite having missed a great deal, if not all, of his rookie season, I don't remember, I think he missed most of it. He still was able to bounce back and immediately pick up where he was drafted to, in terms of his progress, and where he was touted to be is who he became, and he's been a fantastic running mate for Dame Lillard offensively. You can't say enough about C.J. McCollum. He's one of the best mid-range shooters in basketball. He has fantastic handle, fantastic motor. He's consistent. Like I said, very, very high-level shooter from every level. Free throw shooter, fantastic. Three-point shooter, he's good. He can do a lot of things for you. Getting better as a playmaker, but he's a shoot-first guy who's just as devastating as the guy to the left of him. So the sky's the limit for CJ. He's still getting better, and I think we're going to see more of the same going forward from CJ McCollum. One of the best young shooting guards in basketball. So that's what I think of the stars of the Portland Trailblazers. Quite honestly, that's where it stops as far as stars. It's simply this for them. They haven't been able to come together and stop anybody. That's the problem. For all of the greatness of those two players, it does not translate defensively at all. And that is ultimately where their problems start. But it ain't where they end. However, there are some good things on this roster from a player perspective, so we're going to keep on going before we get into all that. The next player on the list is Jusuf Nurkic. And Jusuf Nurkic is a phenomenal talent. The problem with Jusuf is his health. He hasn't been able to string together any healthy seasons, to my knowledge, since leaving Denver. And it's one of those situations where you know for a fact if he could just ever get to a point where his conditioning is where it needs to be, he'll be one of the more reliable centers in basketball. I look at him as a guy like Valanciunas, a guy like Steven Adams. He's in that lane for me, kind of one of those guys. And the thing about him, though, is he has the ability to step into a different level than that. Like, those guys don't do the type of big game, situations that he does. Not say situations, more so he has big games to the point where you're questioning exactly where he stands in history. Like, every once in a while, it happens maybe once or twice, maybe once a year or something like that, but this dude will just go off and put up numbers that are comparable to like some of the greatest players ever played the game. Like, if you look at his stat line, it's one of the greatest stat lines you've ever seen. His best single game is one of the best single games ever done by anyone. So that's who Jusuf Nurkic is. Problem is he doesn't tap into that all the time. He's just one of those people who, every once in a while, he just is the greatest player ever. That's just who he is. That's his DNA. But for the most part, he's a guy who can't stay healthy. But when healthy, he can give you some boards. He's blocking shots. He's got an inside presence. He doesn't shoot the three. I don't know him to be a free throw shooter necessarily, but he's a smart basketball player. And the thing that we learned about him early on was that he could coexist with Nikola Jokic. I thought that was kind of cool that they had those two players on the roster at the same time. And one of the reasons why I thought Nikola Jokic was able to turn into the type of facilitator and the type of player that he has that can play with other bigs is because he started his career playing with Jusuf Nurkic, and going up against him in practice as well made him a more physical player. So I thought those two guys made each other better. I knew they couldn't sustain, being on the same team long term, but I do believe that having played with one another, they're better for it. And I think because Jusuf Nurkic played so well with Nikola Jokic, he was able to play his value up to where, if I'm not mistaken, they were able to get something nice for him. Denver did a good job of developing him. So he went to Portland, and unfortunately, it just hasn't panned out. He's kind of one of those guys where every couple weeks, it's something. He's hurt, and he stays out for a long time. And it's not to a point where he's out of the league, but at his price tag, it's kind of hard to move him, I'd imagine. I don't think there are too many teams that want to take him on at this time at that price. But at the same time, if he's right, he may tap into that. He may give you that big game that you need from him. And if you're a good team, he may do it in a time when you need him to do it most. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Nurkic. I don't think he's going to be on this team much longer. He's expressed that he wants out if things don't get better in a roundabout way. That was what he was basically saying. So moving off from Jusuf Nurkic, we're going into talking about Robert Covington. one of my favorite players. I say this a lot, but he's one of the guys that I look at in the league and say I would love to bring him to the Lakers, because he is probably one of the better prototype 3 and D players out there. When you talk about a guy who can consistently shoot the three and consistently be a problem on the defensive end, Robert Covington is one of the first names that come to mind for me. Started his career in Philadelphia in a hell of a logjam with a lot of young talent when they were just tossing picks together, because they had them. They were just drafting people and just throwing them together. He was one of the guys that they brought in during that time, and he stood out. If I'm not mistaken, he started his career with the G League. I don't know if they drafted him. I don't know if I want to take that back. He might have went undrafted. But either way, he started his career with the G League, came up through Philadelphia during that time, and made a name for himself in the midst of that process. That's a better way to describe what I know. And he started off shooting. He let you know he could string together big games. He was shooting and getting 30 points. He'd string like 7 threes together and stuff like that, and get a bunch of steals. Now, the thing about Robert Covington is he would historically turn the ball over more than you would want him to at his usage rate and for what it is that he does. But he'd make up for it by stealing the ball and doing things on the defensive end like rebounding and stuff like that. So Robert Covington is a good player, unfortunately, in a bad position. Just like everybody else on this team to a degree. And it's a bad position, not because of his usage rate. He'll have his role, but I think this team honestly is missing a lot of things, and one of them is facilitation within the lineup. If you hear me talk about a lot of things, I really believe that you need somebody that can pass first somewhere on the roster, and I don't think I see that here as I continue to look at their roster. The next name we got here is Cody Zeller, or is it Tyler Zeller? It's one of the Zellers. I'm sorry. I know it's the one from Charlotte for sure. I think his name is Cody, but he has a brother named Tyler, and they both played in the NBA. This particular Zeller, I know who I'm talking about, just don't remember his first name. Played with the Charlotte Hornets, and he's an underrated player, man. Zeller is underrated. The thing about him is he's really reliable. No matter what situation you put him in, he comes in, he does his job. He gives you the minutes you need from him. He gives you the production you need from him. and he doesn't complain about his role. He's not somebody you're going to hear about, but his production is better than he's touted as. And in like a lot of situations, guys play on small market teams, and you just don't really see a whole lot of them, and you're on the West Coast. But because I play attention to fantasy basketball, I understand that he holds fantasy relevancy, and he really does contribute to the betterment of the team that he's on. Now, this is going to be his first year with the Portland Trail Blazers. They have an entirely new front court, and he's a part of that. I think he was a decent pickup. I know a lot has been said about how bad the moves they've made, but it's not necessarily because the players they picked up suck. It's just because you need them to make bigger moves based on Dame's statements, obviously. But we'll get to that. Next up, Larry Nance Jr. Now, y'all know we've talked about Larry Nance because he's one of the Laker kids, so that's Laker fam for me. I could make a whole video on Larry Nance. You'll know exactly about Larry Nance if I talk about him. But at the end of the day, he's going to help them in their front court. He's a rebounder. He's a guy that's competent from behind the three. You don't want him shooting all day, but he's good enough to where you're not scared of him shooting. High fly act, super high fly act. Can get off the ground and electrify your crowd in crazy ways, just like his pops. Somebody that leaves good energy in the organizations that he leaves. I can tell you that both organizations think the world of him, both Cleveland and the Lakers. We loved Larry Nance. He was the man here. We loved him. We understood his his limitations on the court. We weren't asking him to take guys off the dribble and do things like that, but Larry Nance was a very, very, very smart basketball player in the sense that he made the right play. He would set the right screen. He would make sure that screen was strong. Stuff like that. You may laugh at me when I say those type of things, but trust me when I tell you, it's the difference between making a guy look good and a guy look bad when he has a bad screener or somebody that can't roll off the basket and catch a lob properly and hit their free throws. Those type of things Larry Nance does on a consistent basis. He's smart. Like I said, his pops played basketball, a legend up there in Cleveland. So he comes from good pedigree. He has good stock, and he brings good character. So that's what you talk about when you speak of Larry Nance. It's a power forward who has a lot of fantasy value, by the way. He's underrated in fantasy because he's a consistent player. Problem with him is he does have stints where he gets hurt. So you can't keep him on your team for long. You end up dropping him. But as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a big play player in terms of rebounds. And, he's not scoring a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. He's not a heavy scorer. I think he averaged about 9 points last year. But those will be quality shots. That's the thing. If you ask him to do more, he's capable. Say, Larry, I need you to go out there and attempt 8 shots. He'll get you 8. 4 of them will be dunks. So I think he's going to have a bigger role on this Portland team. And I also think you look at a guy like Kelly Olynyk last year when he moved on from wherever he was before, I think it was Miami, to the Houston Rockets. And the Rockets put him in a role to actually start. And he was able to show exactly what he could do with a higher usage. That's what Larry's going to get. The roles that Larry's has been in, you got to understand. He averaged 9 points, but he was playing in a logjam in Cleveland. It's like 4 or 5 bigs at a time in Cleveland at all times. Like they always overload. Even when they had Braun, they overloaded on bigs that respectfully are not that talented. Now, that is not the case. They've kind of cleared that up, even though they just picked up Taco Fall, which continues with them having that issue. But that's another story. The point is, Larry Nance is out. He's out of that situation. He's going to a situation where they need everybody to play well. They need everybody to do their part. And we speak about facilitation. Guys who are going to make other people better. Larry can help with that. Larry can help with that. And I think if Chauncey Billups gets a look at Larry Nance and really starts to understand that he is the guy that can help make the right play, he is the guy that thinks the game of basketball, he may find out that he can put the ball in Larry Nance's hands in certain places and make plays for CJ, make plays for Anthony Simons and the other guys on his team. Larry has a chance to be one of those guys who breaks out this season because he's going to be asked to do more, because his role is going to be better, and because I know what he can do when asked to do more. With the Lakers, we had a 3-headed monster at power forward. That was our best position, and he was the guy off the bench. He got minutes, but he was young. Since then, he's gotten stronger, he's gotten smarter, he's gotten better. He's gone through some things with Cleveland in terms of losing and all of that. It's put some character on you, and most importantly, um, he's had a perfect contrast between playing in a massive market and a smaller market. He's had equal time in both of those type of circumstances. I think Larry Nance is ready to take the step forward and be the type of player that can be a reliable starter in this league. And I think Portland has the role for him, and I think that he's going to take advantage of that. So, yeah, that's what I think. Now, if Portland does something else here, maybe that changes. Obviously, they have opportunities to do some things, but for what it is Portland needs, they did a good job bringing him there. That's one of those situations where they make another couple of different moves, and suddenly you're not looking at Portland the way you're looking at them today. So I think that was a sneaky good decision getting him. So yeah, let's move on. Ben Mclemore, pure shooter. Loved having him as a Laker. We all are sad he's not back. Straight up. He was only here for about 5 minutes, but we really appreciated his shooting ability. That was somebody we wanted back. Straight up. I don't really know enough to get into him in terms of his game because I didn't get a chance to see enough of my own team, to be honest. But I know of what he did. He was a great shooter. I listened to what our fans were saying. He did his job. So that's what I can say. I know he was drafted early. Some would say that he was a bust. But what I would say is he's a reliable shooter and probably one of the best shooters on the roster. So next up, Nazir Little, a guy that they drafted early that they need to develop. Simple as that. That's what I know of Nazir Little. They drafted him maybe 2 years ago, and you ain't heard nothing. That's on them. It's not on the player. That's on the organization. You got to play the player and put him in positions to be successful or move him on to a position to let him succeed. And I think he's been one of those guys that's kind of fallen by the wayside on this team simply because of it. So that's what I think. That's honestly what I think. I don't know enough about the player to move on from there, but I do remember what he was drafted to be, and I also know that I ain't seen him. I ain't seen him at all. So there's that. And they got a couple guys on this roster, to be completely honest with you, that I'm not familiar with. C.J. Ellsby and Trendon Watford. Maybe one of those guys were their draft pick. I didn't look that up, to be honest with you. I should have, and I apologize. But that's, like I said, there's more to talk about. Now, that's the end of the roster. They have about 2 roster spots left, I believe, or 3 roster spots left. And they're looking at players they're trying to fill in or making some trades. This is what we're going to segue into. So I hear that they're the leading team in the Ben Simmons sweepstakes right now. And that was a place that I thought was possible. But I figured they wouldn't want to give up CJ and would probably need to. But maybe there's a chance that they don't have to do that if they sweeten the pot enough. So, yeah, keep an eye on that situation. The Portland Trail Blazers may be able to be a player to get Ben Simmons after all, because he's not going to go to one of those California teams unless something changes drastically. But he can get close. Portland's close. Works for Dame. He's from Cali, right? He can do Portland. So it's close enough, honestly. It is. If you want to be somewhere that's in proximity to California, Portland's not a bad place to go. If you're willing to go to say, if your destination you want to be in LA and you go to Oakland, you're closer to Oakland in Seattle. I mean, not in Seattle, excuse me, in Portland than you are to LA. If you're in Oakland, you understand what I'm saying? So it's not as many miles to Oakland as it is it's not as many miles to LA from Oakland as it is to many miles from Portland to Oakland. So if that makes any sense. It should be cool, man. He should be fine there. And honestly, if they don't have to give up Dame or CJ, he should be very fine there, because that is exactly the type of situation he needs to be in. I just didn't think it were possible. So what I'm hearing is Covington and Nurkic are players that would be involved to help make the deal. Covington, of course, played with the Philadelphia 76ers, as we've already said, so that may be something they'd be comfortable in doing. Covington would help the 76ers. They wouldn't miss Ben Simmons because he's a fantastic defender just like Ben Simmons. He ain't on that level, but he would give them some of that and take away their spacing issue and give them yet another big body to put in that starting lineup that fits very well with what they already have. So I like that for them. I like it for Ben. So if that's the case, of course, there'll be more going their way. Portland will probably pick up some picks as well, which is definitely something they will need in that Simmons trade. So for their sake, for Dame's sake, for CJ's sake, I'm hopeful now at this point that they can pull a deal for Simmons without having to give up either one of those guys. That will make it so that Dame can stay in Portland and feel pretty good about it. That gives them a real all-star defensive player, someone who can facilitate the ball to both of those guards who are shoot first, and it gives them a centerpiece that gives them some insurance to let go of a guy like CJ if they decide they want to after all, and not leave Dame without somebody who can legitimately help him compete. So I think that it works. It's a hell of a contract to bring on, but unlike most places, Ben Simmons really can help this team, and they can use what it is that he does. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But here's the issue. What I learned from the article was they are in a very horrible spot with their luxury tax situation. That is why Portland has not made big moves. It's not because Neil O'Shea can't do the job. It's because he's working with less than a lot of GMs are able to work with, because ownership is a repeat tax offender as it pertains to the tax, the salary cap situation. And I'm saying it wrong, so forgive me entirely. But there are luxury tax penalties, and they are repeat offenders. So they can't use their $5 million mid-level exception without taking back loads of interest on that situation, and that's why they can't get better. And this is why I talk about making good deals, making good contracts happen for yourself. As a GM, you have a responsibility to make sure that your owners are happy. But you got to advise the owners on things that are going to hurt them long term. For example, they made a deal a couple years back for a guy by the name of Alan Crabb. They sent Alan Crabb to the Nets and brought back some other player, something like that. In that deal, they ended up being so far over the tax situation. They had gotten so far over their threshold that they now have to continue to pay this guy, just like the Lakers continue to pay Dame. They stretched Alan Crabb, I guess, when they got him or something like that, or however that played out, and now they owe Alan Crabb $2.8 million a year through 2023-2024 season. These are the type of things that they've done, putting themselves in positions to just not really be in a good space. And look, this is the truth. I'm going to tell you guys the truth. Not every owner can sustain their team. Not everybody got that kind of money. If the team's not doing well, it could turn into a liability real quick. You make a couple bad moves, and it doesn't turn into booties sitting down in seats. It doesn't necessarily turn into victories and people buying paraphernalia and watching your team on League Pass or whatever. You may find yourself in situations where you really can't afford to go over the luxury tax. You can't afford to be a tax offender. Not everybody have pockets like that. Even though they're billionaires, it doesn't necessarily show you what's on the other side of their books in other areas. It doesn't necessarily show you what kind of debt they may even find themselves in some cases. Temporarily most of the time, because these are billionaires, but, you got to wait that out. For whatever their situation, got to wait till they can get their funds together before they can kind of pour it into whatever it is that their passion projects are, which a lot of times these guys, basketball is their passion project. Their business is what makes their real money, and sometimes basketball takes a back seat, I'd imagine. Now, this is all in theory. I don't know no real NBA owners, but I do know how big money works, and even billionaires don't want to pay penalties, man. Even billionaires, especially when it doesn't translate to the team being victorious. Now, if you tell them they could get a guy like Karl Towns, I'm pretty sure they'll consider, going over the luxury tax because they know they can make money off that. Or maybe even somebody with a better cachet. They can bring in a guy like, hell, let's reach for the moon. Maybe they get in LeBron James. Now they'll be willing to pay that because they know they can make up that money in whatever way. But as of right now, they haven't been able to do it. And so that's what it is. And another part of that situation is, from what the article said, they really, really love Damon CJ. And both of those guys are max guys. So something's got to give. As I've said on this channel very recently, it's nearly impossible to build around guards in this league, especially if they're not two-way guards that play defense very well, or big bodies like Cade Cunningham or Luka Doncic. You can't build around two of them. You got to get a big guy, you got to get a small guy, or you got to go big. In this league, shooting, but mostly not small guys making $100 million a piece. That just doesn't work. And that's exactly what Portland has going on down there, coupled with their tax penalty, whatever mumbo jumbo that I can barely explain to you guys. All those issues, that couples with them not being able to really get better, or not being willing to take risk with players that are going to put them over that threshold. You know what I mean? They don't have any surefire bets, and couple that with them being in a small market, it's kind of hard to get guys anyway. So they're not going to try to go over the luxury tax, pay 3 times to get a guy that's worth $5 million. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. So that's what's going on with Portland. They just have horrible books, y'all. It's horrible. And I kind of figured that. I'm not going to lie, I kind of figured that. I didn't know it was as bad as it was. Neil O'Shea is in a tough spot. Now that I know what's going on, I'm not judging him anymore. That's over with. He's just working from a very, very tough position. Not everybody can really maneuver in tight spaces, and even if they do, you got to be significantly lucky if you're in a small market to land those guys. It's not like he's working with the Lakers. You can get guys to come play with AD and LeBron James for $2 million. With all due respect, Damon CJ don't have that type of. They can't do that. Now if you get them an Anthony Davis, there you go. But this is a team that hasn't drafted well, and as I've said, they haven't developed the guys they have drafted. They spent too much focus on shoot first guards, which don't make other players better, man. It is what it is. And I tell you, basketball is not about can I win. It's about can we build something that matches up against the field. You can be good, fam. You can go for 75. If the rest of your team is not able to match up with the other teams you're going up against, you're going to lose, bro. And it's not something you can will your way out of. This is science. That's a problem, man. I would talk to a guy like Dame in this regard. It's no question of whether or not you're a champion. You've proven that, in my mind. You've proven it. It's no question you're a champion. Are you in a system that allows you to display your greatness? It's nothing to do with you. It has to do with the people who are in control of the circumstances around you. You can't will your way around that. You can't loyalty your way around that. You can't integrity your way around that. That is what you're in. So you're signing up to live with it. And it's not in their best interest to explain to you all the problems they got. Either you're going to find out the way I did, or you're just not going to know. Maybe they're telling you about it. Maybe you're signing up for it. Maybe you believe you can help be the guy that overcomes the impossible, which is science. But the reality is you don't have enough talent to win. Don't have it. So, and they don't have the means of bringing it to you. They're unwilling. That's the more accurate way of putting it. So maybe they can make a trade for Ben Simmons, change this entire conversation. Hopefully this is the beginning of the change of that. It would behoove them, if they believe Dame is a superstar, to give him what it takes for him to bring forth the type of winning that will ultimately bring you the revenue that maybe isn't there. That is the type of investment you have to go all the way with your investment, I would say. You have to go all the way. If you believe in Dame and CJ, then pay the damn luxury tax it takes to bring the players in. I don't care how much millions it is. If you believe in them, then you know they can win and they could bring you that revenue. But if you don't believe in the investment, then what the hell are you paying them for? That's the question you got to ask ownership. If you don't think these guys can do the job, then what the hell are you paying them for? You just believe in him. What the hell does that even mean, bro? What are you trying to make money or not? Are you trying to win championships or not? You trying to keep fans happy or not? Still business. Maybe that's why. I mean, I don't want to go far into my speculation as to say certain things, but in general, when people make decisions off the wrong stuff, it's why things fall apart. It's why you have issues. It's because you're making decisions off the wrong stuff. It's just the truth. You want to keep Dame and CJ, but you don't want to pay the luxury tax to put them in a position to bring you the type of success that would ultimately make your decision in keeping them make sense. I know you got penalties, maybe it's financial, but then again, it's an investment. So if it can't bring you the money, then what the hell are you owning it for? If it's that much of a liability, sell the team. Seriously. That's what the 30 minutes of this video is ultimately about. Ownership. Sell the Blazers, fam. Just sell them. Just sell them. Honestly. Everybody will be better for it, because at the end of the day, under your tutelage, under your ownership rather, all the books fell apart for whatever reason. This is just like when I was talking about the Lakers in regards to Jim Buss. Under your tutelage, it fell apart. It's not about you're a bad guy. We all live, however we make mistakes. It's whatever, man. That's not that. It's not like that. But when you realize you're the reason something is not working, either you make the changes to make it work, or you step aside and let somebody else make it work. So it doesn't continue to be a liability to you, and most importantly, you don't continue to have your legacy torn down by the mistakes that's being made within the situation, or the appearance of mistakes, even if it's not necessarily mistakes. All I'm saying is, at some point in time, for the integrity of the Blazers and the fans and everything, and most of all, Dame, you got to get him a better situation, man. You got the guy, you can pay a guy a bunch of money, but once a guy's rich already, now he just wants to win. You can get money. I got money. Now, I just want my blood, sweat, and tears to not end in me being disappointed again and again and again. Guys can lose in the finals. Guys can lose in the playoffs because of a mistake or a missed free throw or something like that. But when I line up down there and I don't have enough talent and I'm busting my backside and I can't match up, and my 70-point game don't mean nothing. Come on, man. That contract, it's great, but what is it doing for you? What is it doing for anybody other than just putting money in his pocket in a miserable circumstance? And he's applying his loyalty, and he's staying true to his DNA, and it's all just, it's not going no work out. So that's where I'm at. Like, that's why I've been screaming, dang, you need to leave that place. Now I'm certain of it. They have bad books, bro. Like, they're stranglehold. It is what it is. So I don't know what to say, man. I think they made some good moves. If they can get Ben Simmons and willing to play the luxury tax, and maybe can give Dame Lillard yet another season where he can go get a crack at it. He's great enough to get you as far as dragging somebody to the second round. So if he has Ben Simmons, he can get you. He might be able to get you in the Western Conference Finals. Great as Dame is, I think it's worth a shot. Because right now, you don't have a whole lot to work with. And right now, basically, you're just, from what I've read, they're just afraid to pay people. They don't think anybody's good enough to go over that luxury tax. Ben is, so go get him. That's what I got, man. Thank y'all for listening to me for 33 minutes, but it was a lot to talk about. It's Portland, man. What the hell? You know, this is one of the best players in the league. We're sitting here looking at his career dwindle down the toilet in this bad situation. It deserved 34 minutes of talk. My name is BF44. Thank y'all for watching. I'm out.